June 6th, 1944. The gray waters of the English Channel heave and slap against the steel ramp of a landing craft vehicle personnel. Inside, men of the 146th Engineer Combat Battalion are packed shoulder to shoulder, their bodies swaying in a sick, rhythmic unison with the churning sea. The air is thick with the smell of diesel fumes, salt and vomit, a wretched cocktail that clings to the back of the throat. You are there, feeling the cold spray on your face, the tremor of the engine vibrating through the soles of your boots. Among the grim-faced engineers, their knuckles white on the stocks of their M1 Garand rifles, is technician 5th grade Jack G. Montgomery. He is not a combat engineer. He is a medic. On his helmet, a white circle with a red cross is painted, a target for some, a beacon of hope for others. His job is not to take the beach, but to hold together the men who do. The coastline of Normandy materializes through the morning mist, a long dark smudge on the horizon. It is deceptively peaceful from a distance. Then, the world erupts. German 88mm shells begin to walk across the water, sending geysers of frigid ocean skyward. The deafening crump of the explosions is a physical blow, and the Higgins boat rocks violently, threatening to capsize. Men shout prayers and curses, their voices swallowed by the roaring symphony of war. Montgomery keeps his eyes fixed on the shoreline, his medic's aid kit clutched tight in his hands. He can see the obstacles, the jagged, iron hedgehogs, and the angled logs known as Rommel's asparagus, placed there to tear the bottoms out of their landing craft and funnel the infantry into kill zones. With a bone-jarring shudder, the craft grinds onto the sand of Utah Beach. The ramp crashes down into the blood-flecked surf, and the aural assault intensifies 100-fold. The distinct, terrifying sound of a German Maschinengewehr 42, Hitler's buzzsaw, rips through the air from a concrete fortification designated Widerstandsnest 5. Its rate of fire is so high it sounds not like individual shots, but like the tearing of a giant sheet of canvas. Men at the front of the boat are cut down before their boots even touch French soil. They collapse into the shallow water, their blood instantly staining the tide a sickening shade of crimson. There is no strategy here, no grand plan, only survival. The order is screamed, "Go! Go! Go!" Montgomery plunges into the waist-deep, shockingly cold water, his legs leaden. He follows the engineers, who are running, crawling, and stumbling toward the minimal cover offered by a low seawall some 200 yards distant. The air is alive with crisscrossing tracer rounds, a hornet's nest of invisible death. Sand kicks up in violent plumes where bullets strike. The noise is a physical pressure on the eardrums. The crack of rifles, the thud of mortars, the unending chatter of the machine guns, and the agonized cries of the wounded. He makes it to the seawall, his breath coming in ragged, burning gasps. Men are huddled there, pinned down, their faces masks of terror and determination. But Montgomery's gaze is drawn back to the beach, back to the water's edge where so many have fallen. They are not just casualties. They are his comrades, his responsibility. He sees a man trying to crawl, his leg shattered. Another lies motionless, a dark patch spreading across his chest. The training, the drills, the endless preparation could never capture this pure, undiluted chaos. Every instinct screams to stay down, to preserve his own life behind the sliver of concrete and sand. But that is not the oath a medic takes. He sees only the wounded, hears only their calls for medic. These are the first moments of a day that would test the limits of human endurance, and it is in documenting these individual moments of decision that history truly comes alive. If you believe these stories of profound sacrifice must be remembered in detail, take a moment to subscribe and ensure this history is never lost. As the machine guns continue their relentless fire, Jack Montgomery makes his choice. He rises from cover. He moves without a second thought, his body acting on a will deeper than fear. Pushing himself up, Jack Montgomery scrambles over the lip of the seawall, his boots sinking into the soft, wet sand. A chorus of desperate shouts follows him. "Medic, get down! Stay here, you fool!" But they are distant echoes, drowned out by the roar in his own ears and the sharp whip crack of bullets snapping inches past his helmet. The world becomes a narrow tunnel of vision. There is only the wounded man, some 30 yards away, and the treacherous, open ground that separates them. You can feel the immense gravity of the beach, each grain of sand seeming to pull at his boots, trying to hold him in place, to make him a stationary target. The German machine gunner in Widerstand's Nest 5 sees the movement, the glint of the red cross on the helmet, and traverses his weapon. A stream of 7.92 millimeter rounds stitches a violent line across the sand, chasing Montgomery's shadow. He does not run upright. He runs in a low, desperate crouch, a broken, zigzagging pattern that offers no real protection but feels like the only thing to do. He drops beside the fallen engineer, landing hard on his knees. The soldier is a boy, no older than 19, his face pale and slick with sweat, his eyes wide with shock and pain. His right leg is a ruin of blood and shredded khaki fabric below the knee. Montgomery wastes no time on words of comfort. Action is the only solace here. With practiced, urgent hands, he rips open his aid bag. The sounds of battle are a physical force, the detonation of a nearby mortar shell making the very ground tremble, showering them both with sand and shrapnel. He ignores it. His focus is absolute. He pulls out a field dressing and a packet of sulfa powder, the era's miracle drug against infection. He sprinkles the yellow powder liberally into the wound, a desperate attempt to stave off the gangrene that would surely follow. Then the dressing, wrapping it tight, his fingers stained with the soldier's warm blood. The boy groans, a low, guttural sound of agony. Montgomery finds the syringe of morphine, uncaps the needle, and plunges it into the man's thigh, pushing the plunger home to deliver the pain-dulling opiate. Now comes the harder part. He cannot leave him here. The tide is coming in, and the Germans are using the wounded for bait. He hooks his arms under the engineer's shoulders, feeling the dead weight of a man slipping into shock. "We are going back," Montgomery says, his voice a low command. "I have you." He begins to drag him backward toward the seawall. It is a slow, agonizing process. His own muscles burn with the strain, and his lungs feel as if they are filled with fire. They are a large, slow-moving target, an irresistible invitation to the gunners on the bluff. The Maschinengewehr 42 opens up again, its tracers a terrifyingly beautiful stream of green light zipping past them in the dim morning. Sand erupts all around them. He can hear the thud of rounds hitting the wounded man's pack. He keeps pulling, one backward step after another, his heels digging trenches in the sand. This singular act of courage, repeated under fire, is the very soul of the stories we tell. To ensure these chronicles of heroism continue to be shared, your subscription to this channel makes all the difference. Finally, a dozen hands reach out from behind the seawall, grabbing the wounded soldier, grabbing Montgomery, and pulling them both over the edge into the relative safety of the shallow trench. Jack collapses for a moment, his heart hammering against his ribs. He has done it. One man is safe, but as he catches his breath and looks back over the concrete lip, his gaze sweeps across the killing field. He sees another man down, and another, further on. The work has only just begun. There is no time for rest. This was not a single act. It was merely the first of many he would perform on this, the longest day. The respite behind the seawall lasts only as long as a single shuddering breath. Jack Montgomery pushes himself back up, ignoring the burning protest of his muscles. His eyes, already accustomed to the grim tableau, scan the beach. He sees another soldier, this one caught in the open, lying precariously close to a tangle of concertina wire. The man is trying to push himself up with one arm, the other hanging limp and useless at his side. The work now finds a rhythm, a terrible, life-or-death cadence. There is no grand strategy, only the next man, and the man after that. Once again, Montgomery vaults over the concrete barrier and sprints into the maelstrom. This time, the German gunners seem to be waiting for him. The red cross on his helmet, intended by convention to be a symbol of neutrality, has become a magnet for enemy fire. Bullets churn the sand around his feet, forcing him to dive flat, crawling the last 20 feet on his belly, the coarse, wet sand scraping his hands and knees raw. He reaches the soldier, a private from an infantry company that landed off target. The man's shoulder is a mess of torn flesh and shattered bone. As Montgomery works, cutting away the bloody fabric of the man's jacket, the world violently contracts. A German mortar round, a terrifying 81 millimeter shell, screams down from the sky and detonates in a shell crater not 50 feet away. The concussion is a physical blow that lifts Montgomery off the ground and slams him back down. His ears ring with a deafening, high-pitched whine, and for a terrifying moment, the world goes silent. The roar of the battle replaced by a muffled hum. A sharp, searing pain blossoms in his side. He instinctively reaches down and his fingers come away slick and dark with his own blood. A piece of shrapnel is torn through his field jacket and into the flesh beneath his ribs. You are there, feeling the hot shock of the wound, the dizzying disorientation. Every cell in your body screams to find cover, to tend to your own injury, to simply stop. But Montgomery barely hesitates. He glances at the tear in his fatigues, sees the blood welling, and then turns his attention back to the private. There is no time. The mission is the man in front of him. He applies a pressure dressing to the soldier's shoulder, his movements slightly slower now, a grimace of pain tightening his features. He gets the man's good arm around his own neck and begins the torturous process of dragging him back to the seawall. This was not the flashy heroism of a charge, but the grinding, methodical courage of a man refusing to let his brothers die. It is through the detailed telling of these individual journeys into hell that we truly honor their legacy, and your support in subscribing helps us to keep piecing together these vital histories. Each step is an agony, his own wound throbbing in time with his frantic heartbeat. He feels the wetness spreading across his side, but he locks the pain away in some deep recess of his mind and keeps moving. He makes it back, delivering his second patient into the waiting hands of the other engineers. Someone points to the blood staining his jacket. "Medic, you are hit!" Montgomery shakes his head, waving them off. "It is nothing," he says, his voice raspy. He allows another medic to slap a hasty field dressing on his side, a temporary fix at best, before he is already peering back over the seawall. The beach is a landscape from a nightmare. More landing craft are burning in the surf. More men are falling. The tide is creeping higher, threatening to drown the helpless wounded who lie paralyzed in the shallows. The hours of the morning are slipping away, but for Jack Montgomery, the day's work is still in its infancy. He spots a cluster of 3 wounded men huddled in the scant cover of a disabled Sherman tank, and without a word, he prepares to go again. The disabled Sherman tank sits like a wounded iron beast, beached and silent in the surf, its 75mm gun pointed impotently toward the gray sky. It is to this metal carcass that Jack Montgomery now runs, a hunched figure moving through a landscape of death. The pain in his side is a constant, sharp reminder of his own mortality, but he pushes it down. The distance is perhaps 75 yards, an eternity under the watchful eyes of the German gun emplacements. He uses shell craters for momentary cover, diving into one, catching his breath for 3 seconds, then scrambling out and running again. The incoming tide now sloshes around his ankles, a cold, relentless presence. It is a race, not just against the bullets, but against the sea itself, which threatens to claim the living and the dead without prejudice. You can feel the drag of the water on his boots, each step a small victory against the pull of the channel. He reaches the relative sanctuary of the tank's hull, sliding into the shallow water behind it. The 3 men are there, just as he saw them. One, a corporal, is conscious, propped up against a tread, his M1 rifle resting uselessly beside him. He has a nasty gash on his forehead and is holding a blood-soaked compress to his thigh. The other 2 are in worse shape. One lies on his back, his breathing shallow and ragged, a dark spreading stain on his abdomen indicating a gut wound, a near-certain death sentence on this beach. The 3rd is unconscious, his face ashen, a tourniquet already applied high on his arm by the corporal. Montgomery's mind works with the cold, detached clarity of a seasoned medic. Triage. He cannot save them all at once. Save them. "Medic," the corporal rasps, his voice weak. "Glad to see you." Montgomery gives a curt nod, his fingers already at work on the man with the abdominal wound. He knows the odds are slim, but he must try. He applies a large Carlisle model battle dressing, pressing down hard to try and slow the bleeding. But he knows it is a futile gesture without a surgeon. He injects a syringe of morphine into the man's leg, a small mercy against the agony to come. He then turns to the unconscious soldier checking the tourniquet. It is tight, as it should be. The man's pulse is thready and weak. The corporal is the last priority. His wounds are serious but not immediately fatal. It is a brutal calculus, the arithmetic of survival. The roar of the battle seems to intensify, and the steel hull of the tank reverberates as a volley of machine gun fire hammers against its opposite side. In this vortex of chaos, individual stories of bravery could so easily be lost, swallowed by the sheer scale of the conflict. It is our mission to ensure they are not. If you believe in preserving these accounts of unwavering duty, your subscription is a powerful way to support that effort. Montgomery looks back toward the seawall, then at the water now swirling around his knees. The bodies of the fallen are beginning to drift grotesquely in the surf. The wounded he left in the craters are in danger of drowning. Time is running out. He makes his decision. He grabs the unconscious soldier. "Corporal," he shouts over the din, "keep pressure on that wound. I will be back for you." The corporal nods, his face grim with understanding. Heaving the dead weight of the unconscious man onto his shoulder in a fireman's carry, Montgomery stumbles out from behind the tank. The load is immense, his own wound screaming in protest. The water is now a powerful adversary, dragging at his legs, trying to pull him down. Each step forward is a monumental effort of will. He fixes his eyes on the seawall and begins the long, terrible walk back, a lone figure of defiance against the twin onslaught of German fire and the inexorable Atlantic tide. He stumbles the final few feet to the seawall, his legs shaking uncontrollably from the strain, and half collapses as other soldiers relieve him of his burden, gently lowering the unconscious man. For a moment, Jack Montgomery leans against the rough concrete, the grit pressing into his cheek, his breath coming in ragged, painful sobs. The world swims in a gray haze. The blood from his own shrapnel wound is now soaked through his jacket and the field dressing, a warm, sticky wetness that is both a danger and a distant annoyance. But the image of the other two men, the corporal and the gut-shot private, still behind the tank, with the water rising higher, is a branding iron on his mind. There is no choice. There is only the mission. He pushes himself off the wall. He finds a roll of field telephone wire discarded by a Signal Corps soldier. An idea, born of desperation and exhaustion, forms. He cannot keep carrying men this way. His strength is failing. He ties one end of the wire around his waist, handing the other to a sergeant crouched nearby. "When I get back there," he yells, his voice hoarse, "pull us in." The sergeant looks at Montgomery, at the blood on his uniform, at the sheer, insane bravery of the proposal, and gives a determined nod. "You got it, Doc." With a thin wire trailing behind him, he runs back into the inferno. The journey seems even longer this time. The sand and surf, a grasping enemy. You are with him, feeling the burn in his lungs, the throbbing pain in his side, the sheer weight of accumulated fatigue. He is no longer just a medic. He is a lifeline, a physical connection between the dying and the living. He reaches the Sherman tank. The water is now past his knees. The private with the abdominal wound is still breathing, his life slipping away with each shallow exhalation. The corporal is holding on, his face a mask of gritty resolve. Montgomery knows the gut-shot soldier is too heavy to drag, too fragile to move quickly. He makes another impossible choice. He turns to the corporal. "I am taking him first," he says, pointing to the dying private. The corporal understands. It is a last, desperate gamble. Montgomery secures the telephone wire around the dying man's chest under his arms. He gives 3 sharp tugs on the line, the signal. Then he begins to pull, guiding the semi-buoyant body through the churning, debris-filled water, while the men at the seawall heave on the other end. It is a slow, clumsy, agonizing retrieval. The German machine gunners, perhaps momentarily confused or in the process of reloading, have eased their fire on his position, but stray rounds still zip overhead with a menacing hum. The private is a dead weight, his body limp, and Montgomery has to constantly adjust his grip, keeping the man's head above the waves. He is a shepherd in a sea of blood, guiding his flock home. These are the details, the wire, the signal, the rising water, that define an act of heroism, transforming it from a line in a citation to a visceral, human experience. We are committed to unearthing and presenting these details, and your subscription ensures this work continues. He finally gets the soldier to the seawall. where he is lifted to safety, his chance is still infinitesimal, but no longer zero. Jack Montgomery, without pausing, turns back toward the sea. The corporal is still waiting. The sun, a pale, indifferent disk in the smoke-choked sky, begins its slow climb toward noon. For Jack Montgomery, time has lost all meaning. There is only the rhythm of the work, the run out, the frantic moments of first aid, and the agonizing journey back. He returns for the corporal, using the same telephone wire lifeline to help haul the wounded but still conscious man through the deepening water. By the time he gets the corporal to the seawall, the tide is lapping at its base, and the Sherman tank has become an island. The beach, once a wide expanse of sand, is now a narrow strip of chaos, cluttered with the wreckage of war and the bodies of the fallen. The initial assault wave is over, but the battle for Utah Beach is far from won. Artillery and mortar fire continue to rain down, and German snipers are now methodically picking off targets of opportunity. Montgomery establishes a makeshift aid station in a large shell crater behind the seawall. It is a pathetic sanctuary, offering minimal protection, but it is the best he can do. He lays the wounded in rows, their groans and quiet pleas for water a constant heartbreaking chorus. His own supplies are running dangerously low. His aid kit is nearly empty of bandages, his sulfa powder is gone, and he has used his last syringe of morphine. He begins to improvise, tearing strips of fabric from the uniforms of the dead to use as bandages, using rifle slings as tourniquets. He scavenges the aid kits of fallen medics and wounded men, his movements a blur of desperate efficiency. His own wound continues to seep blood, a dull, persistent ache that he has learned to ignore completely. You are there in that crater, the air thick with the metallic scent of blood and the acrid smell of cordite. You see the sheer exhaustion etched on Montgomery's face, the deep lines of fatigue around his eyes, the grime and sweat and blood that cake his skin. But you also see the unwavering resolve. He moves from man to man, his touch gentle but firm, his voice a low, calming presence amidst the pandemonium. He is not just treating wounds. He is dispensing hope, a commodity more precious than morphine on this bloody stretch of coast. When a man cries out from a shrapnel wound to the leg, Montgomery is there to tighten a compress. When another begins to succumb to shock, his skin cold and clammy, Montgomery elevates his feet and covers him with a spare blanket, trying to preserve what little body heat he has left. He seems to be everywhere at once, a lone figure waging a personal war against death itself. The hours crawl by, 6 hours, then 8, then 10. The nature of his heroism is not in one single explosive act, but in this relentless, sustained effort over an unimaginable length of time. Documenting this kind of endurance is the core of our mission, a testament to the human spirit. Subscribing to this channel is a direct way to honor that spirit and help us tell these incredible stories. As the afternoon wears on, the tide begins to recede, exposing the full horror of the morning's assault. The beach is a graveyard, but for the dozens of men lying in and around Montgomery's crater, it is also a place of survival. He has single-handedly rescued man after man, turning what should have been a death sentence into a chance at life. His actions have not gone unnoticed. The engineers of the 146th, the infantrymen, the sailors, they see the medic with the blood-stained uniform, the one who keeps running into the fire when everyone else is seeking cover. He has become a legend in the space of a single day, but for Jack Montgomery, there is no legend. There is only the next wounded man. The sun begins to dip toward the horizon, casting long, somber shadows across the beach. His work is still not done. Dusk settles over the Normandy coast, painting the sky in bruised shades of purple and orange. The fury of the battle has subsided into a tense, sporadic exchange of fire. The sounds of individual rifle shots and the occasional jarring burst from a machine gun now echo across the littered beach, a grim postscript to the day's cacophony. For over 12 consecutive hours, Jack G. Montgomery has worked without food, without water, without rest. His body is a single, screaming symphony of pain and exhaustion. The shrapnel wound in his side throbs with a venomous heat, a constant reminder of the day's toll. He has lost count of the number of men he has treated, the number of lives he has pulled from the water's edge. The number is not what matters. All that matters is that they are alive. His makeshift aid station in the crater is now an organized, if grim, collection point. He has stabilized all the men he can, his hands and uniform so stained with blood they appear almost black in the fading light. He moves among them one last time, checking a dressing here, adjusting a splint there, offering a quiet word of encouragement. He is operating on fumes, on a reserve of will that seems bottomless. You can see the profound weariness in his posture, the way his shoulders slump, the slow, deliberate nature of his movements. He is a man who has poured out every ounce of his strength, his courage, and his humanity onto the sands of this foreign shore. The beachhead is secure now. Reinforcements and supplies are finally moving inland, and organized medical detachments are setting up proper aid stations further from the front. The tide has been turned, not just by the grand strategies of generals, but by the cumulative effect of countless individual acts of valor, personified by the medic from the 146th Engineers. A medical officer, a captain with a weary but authoritative air, finally makes his way to Montgomery's position. He takes in the scene, the rows of wounded, the evidence of sustained, desperate care, and then his eyes land on Montgomery himself, on the dark, ugly stain spreading from the medic's own hastily applied bandage. "Son, you are wounded," the captain says, his voice a mixture of concern and awe. "You need to be evacuated." For the first time all day, Jack Montgomery stops. The order seems to penetrate the fog of exhaustion. He looks down at his side as if noticing the injury for the very first time. He gives a slow, tired nod. His war on Utah Beach is over. The men he saved are a living testament to his refusal to yield to fear, to pain, or to the overwhelming odds. This complete, unwavering dedication, sustained for 12 hellish hours, is the kind of story that transcends history and becomes a lesson in the highest ideals of service. We believe telling this story, in its full, unflinching detail, is the greatest tribute we can offer. Your subscription is the fuel that allows us to continue this important work, ensuring that the legacy of heroes like Jack Montgomery endures.